My perfect teenage daughter ran away from home. I searched for her for years, and what I found years later still haunts me to this day. My sweet little Lynn was the kind of girl who hid behind my leg when boys waved at her and blushed when they gave her cartoon kisses. Around her freshman year of high school, I first noticed a slight change in her behavior. She started wearing more makeup and less clothes. When I would question her about it, she would always get really mad at me, yelling that it was her body and she could do whatever she wanted. Another grandiose excuse was, quote, This was really hard for me to watch, because I was watching my precious, sweet little daughter try to grow into what she thought was a real woman. I always tried to explain to her that putting on makeup and wearing less clothes didn't mean she had to do what everyone else did, and that she should be proud of who she wanted to be. Still, she wouldn't budge. And I'm a big believer in a more liberal upbringing. So at the time, I thought maybe it was just a phase. But our relationship slowly deteriorated. Arguments turned into fights, and fights turned into arguments. She started bringing boyfriends over, and although I didn't get a good look at them all, I saw some who looked twice her age. Then one day, I lost it. I went into her room while she was at school, trying to find something I knew she'd taken. Rummaging through her nightstand, I found a tiny white baggie hidden behind the lamp. I had my share of college days, so I knew exactly what that little package meant. When she came home from school, I had a huge confrontation with her. She ended up yelling at me, and I yelled back. Things got so bad that the next morning when I checked to see if she had left for school, she was gone. 2 suitcases were missing from my closet. I immediately called the police. How could my sweet Lynn do this? Run away from me, the person who loves her more than anything. I searched the entire neighborhood, drove around our small town for hours. We found nothing, and neither did the police. After about 4 years of no contact, one of my daughter's mom friends shared a disturbing Instagram post with me. It was like the video of my daughter on the news. At first I didn't understand why she would be on the news, but then I saw the headline. Sex workers protesting on the South Side. I couldn't believe it. There was no way my daughter would actually go down such a hard path. The more I looked at her in the video, the more distraught she looked. Tears immediately started flowing from my eyes. Here I was, sitting in my bedroom, watching my daughter's life spiral out of control, and there was nothing I could do about it. The video was from Los Angeles, California, and I lived in a small town in Texas. A few days after receiving the news, I decided it was the right thing to do to go and look for my daughter. I booked the next flight to Los Angeles and was there in less than a couple of days. I spent the next few weeks driving a rental car and scouring the south side of town, just like the news report said. I'd pick a street, drive all the way down it until it ended, circle the block, and repeat. I knew the chances of seeing her were slim, but I had no other choice. I knew the police wouldn't be much help, so I didn't bother contacting them. Then one day, a miracle happened. I was driving through a deserted, abandoned neighborhood when I saw features that looked familiar, like my daughter's. I pulled up closer, rolled down the window, and called out her name, quote, Eeks. She turned around instantly, and there she was, my beautiful girl. I got out of the car and ran toward her. To my surprise, she ran towards me too. Quote, she cried. We hugged each other like we never had before, tears streaming down our faces. It was a moment I will never forget. She got into my car, and after about 10 minutes of hugging and crying, I took her out to eat and talk. She still looked woozy, and I could tell she was in pain. We ate. I thought we would have a good conversation catch up. Instead, she sat there with a blank expression the entire time, showing little emotion. I didn't know if the drugs were doing the talking, but it scared me a lot. Towards the end of dinner, I got her to talk for a bit, but after we were done, I got into the car, expecting her to follow me. She didn't. She just stood there looking at me. I asked her what she was doing. Didn't she want to come back with me and start over? She came closer and told me something that would haunt me for centuries. I couldn't go, or they would find me and hurt me. That was where I drew the line. I knew I had to get the police involved. I insisted she come with me, but she said she was being followed and had already been warned without my knowledge. While we ate, I told her to stay put and not move while I called the police. As the phone rang, I noticed she seemed to be looking into the distance. She looked at something and then quickly came back to me. She hugged me one last time and said, I'm sorry, but I love you, Mom. Then she ran. She ran faster than I ever could. After that moment, I felt like I was drowning in my own grief. Now I knew my daughter was in trouble, and I couldn't even protect her when she was right there in front of me. I felt like a failure as a mother, a failure as a protector, and a failure as a person. Watching my daughter's life spiral out of control sent me spiraling into despair myself. I couldn't go back to Texas without taking Lynn. The thought of going home, explaining to my family that I'd found Lynn, only to lose her again, was unbearable. After Lynn ran away, I sat paralyzed in my car, going over everything in my mind, wondering where I'd gone wrong. Calling the police had gotten me nowhere, and I couldn't bring myself to go back to her empty room. So I bounced from motel to motel, wandering unfamiliar streets, handing out flyers to anyone who would listen. The nights were filled with regret. Maybe if I had said, "I love you more, and I'm less disappointed." Most days I just tried to move on, hoping that every promise from a shelter worker to call meant something. But the city made it easier to lose faith. Still, every morning I forced myself to get up and go out because no matter how hopeful I wasn't ready to give up on my daughter. I started in Figueroa, posting flyers at bus stops and laundromats, heading south. People passed me in waves, some on their way to work, some already starting to drink. I caught glances now and then, but mostly people didn't look. Those watching seemed to know. Another missing girl, another desperate mother. I wondered how many faces they had seen at these polls before. On the corner where a group of children huddled around a broken shopping cart, I handed out a few flyers. One girl, barely 16 by my reckoning, with chipped nail polish and a shiny nose ring, stared at Lynn's photo for a long moment. "She doesn't hang out with us," she finally said, shrugging. But I saw the twist in her mouth as she said it. She stuffed the flyer into her jacket pocket anyway. Every day I added new stops. The soup kitchen on 7th, the day center with its threadbare couches and signature sheet, the dingy park where men played cards for change. I had learned to expect nothing and see everything. Some people prayed for me. Others looked away, afraid my grief was contagious. At one shelter, a tired caseworker with a clipboard called me "Madam" and let me use her phone. She was scrolling through a database of missing teens, tapping names with cold efficiency. "We see a lot of runaways," she said in her voice, even but not angry. "Sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't." I jotted down addresses, phone numbers, dates, trying to piece together a trail. Every now and then, there was a glimmer of hope. Someone thought they'd seen a girl like Lynn at a bus stop or working behind the counter at a donut shop. I'd drive there, my heart pounding, scanning each face. Every time, it wasn't her. When the noise of the city became too loud, I found myself staring at the sidewalk, reading the faded chalk lines and wishing for something to show me the way forward. Sometimes I'd sit in my car and just breathe, letting the world move around me. I couldn't let myself break. Not now. I began to recognize faces. The security guard who watched me tape flyers to the window of the 7-Eleven. The old lady with the shopping cart who set up camp at the freeway exit. There was a strange comfort in their routine. A reminder that life goes on even for those stuck in place. But I was moving too. Every block, every flyer, every "Have you seen her?" kept hope alive, no matter how thin. I told myself that as long as I searched, Lynn was still out there, still possible, still mine. I put off calling home as long as I could. It was easier to pretend Texas didn't exist. No house, no sun, no bills piling up in the mailbox. As long as I kept moving, I could tell myself I was still a mother, still fighting for Lynn. But eventually the guilt became so thick I couldn't breathe through it. I bought a calling card at the gas station. My cell phone was nearly dead, and the last time I used it to make a long-distance call, it died mid-sentence to Joshua. This time, I didn't want an excuse. The phone rang 3 times before my son answered. His voice was deeper than I remembered, older, more bitter, carrying something sharp I had never heard in it. Quote, he said, quote, "The word hit me like a stone." Quote 7, I said, trying to give my voice a lightness I didn't feel. He was silent. "Are you still in California?" I nodded, then realized he couldn't see me. Quote 9, another long pause. Quote 10, "Grandma's worried. Dad called. He said, 'If you don't check in at work, you're going to lose your job.'" I tried to keep my voice even. "Joshua, I have to find her. I can't just leave. You abandoned us." His voice broke a little. "You abandoned me." It hurt. Stronger than any insult. I tried to swallow it. "I know, honey. It's a shame. I just have to keep trying. She's out there somewhere. I know she is. I saw her room today," he said, softening. "A second. It still smells of her. Sometimes I go in there and just dream. for you to come home, Mom, even if you can't bring her with you." His words were pressing every sore spot of mine. Guilt, shame, and melancholy were intertwined in my chest. "I can buy," I whispered. "But I promise, I'm not giving up. Not on you. Not on her." Joshua exhaled, the weight of a teenager holding the world on his shoulders. "Just call us. Okay? Grandma says she prays for you both every night. Even Dad." We said goodbye. Neither of us wanted to say, "I love you," but we were both thinking it. After I hung up, I stared at the motel ceiling for a long time, trying not to let the tears fall. I felt like a ghost, walking in two worlds but belonging to neither. But I couldn't stop. If I did, Lynn's face would disappear from these streets, and I wasn't prepared to let her become just another lost girl. At a makeshift soup kitchen, at a folding table set up in the vacant lot of an abandoned church, I met Linda. She looked as out of place as I did. Jeans a little too clean, hair pulled back tightly, clutching a stack of leaflets with trembling hands. The volunteers glanced at us and, perhaps out of pity, poured us coffee that was too hot. We stood apart, two islands in a sea of failure. She nodded at my stack of leaflets. "Do you have a missing person too?" I held up Lynn's photo. "It's been 4 years. I saw her a few days ago, but she ran away." Linda smiled sadly and showed me her flyer. "My son Toby. He left home last year. I haven't seen him since Easter." It was weird talking to someone who understood the language of disappearance. With Linda, didn't have to explain why my hands shook or why I stared at every teenager's face as she passed. She told me about calling hospitals, pestering the police, sleeping in her car outside shelters. "I started memorizing appointment schedules," she admitted, rubbing her eyes. "They're always full. They don't know anything." We wandered the streets that day, handing out flyers and sharing stories. Linda talking about her quiet house in Bakersfield, her angry ex-husband, birthday parties with empty chairs at the table. I told her about Joshua, about the guilt that consumed me when I called home, about how my own mother had stopped asking when I'd be home. It was easier to walk with someone else. We covered each other, taking turns talking to people who might have news. At one point, Linda took my hand when a fight broke out outside, and we both hid in a doorway until it died down. We laughed, out of breath, shaken, and for a second it almost seemed normal. Two mothers on a weird business trip. That night, we ate cheap tacos in her car and talked about the life we had. Linda said she'd started writing letters to Toby, just in case. I write them, seal them, and keep them in the glove compartment. I confessed I'd started doing the same for Lynn. We exchanged addresses, promised to call if either of us heard anything. "Maybe our kids ran away together," Linda joked, forcing a smile that nearly broke my heart. Before we parted, Linda placed her hand on top of mine. "Don't give up, Deborah, even if you feel like you have." I promised her I wouldn't, and for the first time in weeks, I almost believed myself. The nights in Los Angeles left too much room for memories. Sometimes I'd lie awake on the flimsy hotel sheets, listening to the sounds of sirens and distant arguments drift through the window, my mind racing back faster than I could stop it. I remembered the first time I'd told Lynn about the divorce. She was 11, sitting on the swing in our Tucson garden, the Arizona sun blinding her hair with white light. I rehearsed what to say, but it all came out wrong. "Yours, Daddy, and I can't live together anymore, but we both love you. That never changes." She stared straight ahead, her hands tightening around the chains. "I know what it means," she said quietly. "It means Daddy doesn't love you anymore." I wanted to argue, to unravel the truth, but what was the point? The damage had already been done, and children see through lies more keenly than any adult. The move to Oregon was supposed to be a new beginning. 4 girls and a tired mother, crammed into a station wagon, heading north with everything they owned. I tried to make it an adventure, choosing songs for the road, planning picnics along the way, but bitterness hung over every mile. The girls fought more than they laughed. Lynn became quiet and sharp around the edges, always looking at me as if she expected me to disappear too. By the time she was in high school, I was losing her. She changed her hair, changed friends, stayed out late under different excuses. I didn't dare argue. I told myself it was okay, that she was finding herself. But every door that slammed shut felt like another crack in our family. Sometimes, after the younger girls went to bed, I'd stand in the hallway and listen to Lynn's breathing, proof that she was still there, still safe. I made mistakes. I know that now. I've given in to my anger too often. I've tried to talk to her rationally, like a child, even after she's long outgrown it. Some nights, I think about every harsh word. Every time I chose work or exhaustion over listening, regret is a language I speak fluently. Here in the city where she disappeared, the past lingers. I replay old fights, moments when I looked straight at my daughter and didn't see what she needed. Maybe if I'd loved her differently, if I'd paid more attention, she'd be safe in a warm bed instead of lost in the darkness. I can't change anything. All I can do is keep searching, hoping it's not too late to find her and find forgiveness for both of us. I used to believe in the system. Maybe not completely, but enough to think that if something terrible happened, someone in uniform would help. In Los Angeles, that faith quickly faded. The first time I went to the police station, I put on my cleanest shirt and tried to keep my voice even. I waited an hour to be seen, sitting on a plastic chair under bright fluorescent lights. The room smelled of sweat, cheap coffee, and tired hope. When it was my turn, the officer barely looked at me. "Has she ever been here?" he asked, scratching at something, not looking up. "No, she's never been here," I said. He raised an eyebrow, leafing through a worn folder. "When was the last time you saw her?" "This morning," I said, feeling her calm change tone. "Just confirm her name and age," he said. "Her name is Lynn. She's 16, I said, shaking. "We're full every night," she said. "But if she checks in, we'll call you." "Have you seen the girl in the blue jacket, the long brown hair? Please, she's sick. She needs help." The young man nodded toward the row of benches. "She'd been here 5 minutes ago, gone with the others, down that alley." I ran. My legs burned, my lungs felt like sandpaper as I walked down the alley behind the depot. The smell of urine and garbage almost choked me, but I kept going, my eyes moving over each figure hunched in the shadows. Then I saw her. At least that's what I thought. A girl in a blue jacket, her head down, surrounded by 3 others. Her gait was wrong, her steps sluggish. "Lynn!" I screamed, my voice shaking, desperate and wild. She looked up. For a moment I was sure it was her. The same lost eyes, the same familiar slouch. But as I got closer, the girl stepped back, fear flashing across her face. It wasn't Lynn, just another runaway, another lost child carrying my daughter's pain. One of the others glared at me, blocking her. "Get out of here, lady. Don't you know these streets eat up your kind?" I recoiled, humiliation and heartbreak writhing inside me. For a moment, I just stood there, dizzy and lost, the city spinning without me. The hope I had felt was already dissolving into self-deprecation. I'd allowed myself to believe, just for a second, that it was possible. My daughter had finally been found. Instead, I was left empty-handed, her name echoing on my tongue. I walked slowly back to the car, each step heavier than the last. The sun was setting when I collapsed behind the wheel, tears streaming down my cheeks. I held Lynn's photo to my heart and whispered, "I'm still here. I'll keep looking. I promise." But in that moment, even my promises seemed thin, like breath on glass, already fading into the darkness. The streets changed after the sun went down. Even the shadows seemed different, longer, hungrier, holding secrets I didn't want to know. Still, I couldn't sleep. Every night I convinced myself that the next hour, the next turn, was the one that would bring Lynn back to me. I became reckless. Sometimes I'd park and walk alone down side streets, clutching my phone and the can of pepper spray I'd bought at the gas station. I told myself I was being brave, but deep down I knew it was closer to desperation. One night, as I was pasting a flyer to a lamppost behind a row of boarded-up stores, I heard footsteps behind me. Fast, sharp, too close. I turned and came face to face with a young man in his late 20s, his eyes darting, his breathing ragged. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice rough and low. I tried not to let the fear show in my voice. "I'm just looking for someone. My daughter. She's missing." He glanced at the flyer. "Do you have money?" I shook my head, but he came closer anyway. "Lady, you shouldn't be here." He reached for my purse, quick as a snake. I tried to step back, but he grabbed my arm, yanking me hard enough to trip me. Before I could scream, a second figure appeared. A woman, then a blur, her face hidden by a dirty scarf. She screamed something in a language I didn't know, and the young man released me, spitting on the ground. "You're lucky," he muttered, walking away into the darkness. I stood there shaking, too shocked to cry. The woman approached, her eyes narrowed. "It's stupid to walk alone," she said, her voice soft but stern. "This place will swallow you up. Go home." "I can't," I whispered. "Not without her." She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded, as if she understood. She pressed something into my hand. A small flashlight, cheap but sturdy. "Next time, keep your eyes open. Watch the shadows." I thanked her, the words caught in my throat. As she disappeared into the night, I realized I was clutching the photo of Lynn so tightly it was crumpled. My knees buckled and I sat on the curb, breathing hard, shivering in the cold. I wanted to give in. I wanted to call Joshua and beg him to come get me. But my pride wouldn't let me. I wiped my face, watched my breathing, and forced myself to stand. I was still alive. I could still search. But for the first time I realized how fragile I'd become, how close I'd come to losing not just Lynn, but myself. That night, back at the motel, I locked the door and fell asleep, fully clothed, the flashlight clutched in my hand. The city was still humming outside, but I dreamed of home, of Lynn as a little girl, asleep in her bed, her small hand clutching mine. When I woke up, I knew the city hadn't broken me yet, but it was getting close. It was almost dawn when the motel phone rang, a sharp, unnatural sound that pulled me out of a restless sleep. For a second I thought I was dreaming, but the phone kept ringing. I rushed to it, my heart pounding in my throat. "Hello?" A woman's voice crackled over the phone. Official, but urgent. "This is County Hospital. We have an unidentified girl whose description matches the flyer you dropped last night. We need you to come and confirm." My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped the phone. Is she okay?" "She's alive. She's in bad shape. Please come as soon as possible." I was out the door a few minutes later, oblivious to everything but the nurse's instructions. The city was gray and empty. The streets had been washed clean by a rare rain. I prayed out loud, promising anything to get my daughter back. Everything in the hospital moved at half speed. The nurse at the desk took one look at my clothes and my drawn face, then silently led me down a long hallway that smelled of antiseptic and old fear. She stopped at a curtained room. "Get ready. She's been through a lot." I took a shaky breath and stepped inside. There was a girl lying on the bed, thin and bruised, her hair dark and tangled, an oxygen tube under her nose. She looked so small, her chest tight. I forced myself to move closer, whispering, "Lynn." The girl turned her head, blinking at me with empty, unfamiliar eyes. It wasn't Lynn. My knees almost buckled, but I grabbed the edge of the bed to keep from falling. The girl looked at me, searching my face for something I couldn't give her. I searched for words. "I'm sorry. I thought you were my daughter." She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "My mother doesn't know where I am either." For a moment we sat in silence, two strangers lost in different kinds of pain. I squeezed her hand because it was all I had to offer. Back in the hallway, the nurse tried to comfort me, but her words fell on deaf ears. "You're not the first," she said softly. "Sometimes I think every mother in LA is looking for someone." I left the hospital empty. My hope had dried up and settled heavy in my bones. On the sidewalk outside, the sun was rising over the city, casting the cracked concrete gold. I stared at it, trying to make myself feel something, anything, other than loss. But all I could do was keep going, step by step, day by day, hoping that the next time the call would be for Lynn, and that this time it wouldn't be too late. When the streets got too loud and the world seemed hopeless, I wrote letters to Lynn. Not emails, not texts, but old-fashioned letters on motel stationery or the backs of diner receipts. I never sent them. I just needed to talk to her, even if she never read a word of them. I wrote the first one after the hospital, hunched over a small table by the window, the night sounds of the city filtering through the glass. "Dear Lynn, I saw a girl in the hospital today. For a moment, I thought it was you. I wanted it so badly, I almost convinced myself. But it wasn't you. I'm still here. I'm still looking. I'll always be looking." I wrote about Texas, about the way Joshua's voice had changed, how your grandmother asked about you every Sunday after church, how your old room smelled dusty from last time. I remembered all the little things, how you hated ketchup on your fries, how you snuck cookies to your little sister after bedtime, how you sang to yourself before bed when you thought no one was listening. I'm sorry for every time I screamed, for every time I let my fear turn to anger. I wish I had listened more. I wish I had told you that you were enough, even when you were lost. I didn't care what you'd done or where you'd been. I just want you to come home. Sometimes my letters were angry. Why did you run, Lynn? Why did you leave me to chase the shadows? Didn't you know I'd follow you anywhere? Didn't you care that I'd lose everything for the chance to hold you again? But mostly they were love letters, a mother's promise, written in ink, the ones that stain your hands and never quite come out. I still keep your picture in my wallet. Sometimes I talk to it. Maybe that means I'm going crazy, or maybe it means that I'm still your mother, even here, Even on the loneliest nights, I'd slip letters under my pillow, as if words could replace the daughter I couldn't find. I'd tell myself that one day, if I was lucky, I'd hand them to her, and she'd understand. She'd forgive me, and maybe I'd forgive myself too. But until then, the letters piled up, silent witnesses to my hope, my grief, my love. And I kept writing, because as long as I wrote, Lynn was still out there. As long as I wrote, there was still a chance. Late at night, sometimes I'd look through old photos on my phone, birthdays in Texas, Joshua smiling in his baseball cap, Lynn blowing out candles, the whole family huddled together on the couch. It felt like another life, another version of myself. Every few weeks, I forced myself to call home. I knew they were worried, even if they never said so outright. This time, Joshua answered the third time, his voice flat, half asleep. He didn't ask where I was. He already knew. "How was school?" I asked, as if homework or grades mattered right now. He paused. "Fine, I guess. Grandma still makes meatloaf on Sundays. She leaves a plate out for you. You know, like you're about to walk in the door." I closed my eyes, picturing the old kitchen, the chipped tiles, the sound of forks scraping across plates. "Tell her I miss her. I miss both of you." He sighed. "You could just come home." I bit my lip. "Not yet, honey. I have to find her." "I know." His voice was tired, husky at the edges. "But I need you too, Mom. It's like I've lost both of you." I wanted to explain, to make him understand the terror that had kept me in Los Angeles. A promise I couldn't break. But the words stuck. The guilt was heavy, a physical ache in my chest. Okay. We hung up. Nothing resolved. And for a long time I sat with the phone warm in my hand, staring at the motel ceiling. I thought about the last time we'd all been together. Lynn and Joshua fighting over the remote. My mother laughing like we'd always be whole. I wondered what they told the people at church. What story they spun for the neighbors who asked why I'd disappeared. Why was I chasing a daughter who didn't want to be found? Were they blaming me? Wanting me to give up? I was haunted by the feeling that with every mile I stayed away, I was losing a piece of home. But if I left, I would lose Lynn forever. And maybe myself too. In the silence, I pulled out the stack of letters I'd been saving for Lynn, holding them in my palm. For a moment, I wished I could write a letter to Joshua. Explain what it was like to love two children at once and feel like you were failing them both. Instead, I just sat there, missing a life that no longer existed, praying that one day, somehow, I could bring us all home. The day I met Linda again, the city was shrouded in a pre-dawn fog that made everything seem distant and muted. We found each other in line at the soup kitchen. Our shoulders were hunched in the damp. I could see the tension in her face before she spoke. She looked even thinner, her eyes red from crying. "They found Toby," she whispered, her voice hollow. I felt my stomach drop. "Where?" She shook her head. "The drainage canal behind the Alhambra. They think he's been there for weeks. They said he must have been alone." There was nothing to say. I held out my hand to her, and for a moment we just stood there, two mothers clinging to each other like life preservers. The noise and bustle of the line faded into the background until all I could hear was Linda's ragged breathing. I thought I'd feel something. Relief, perhaps, of finally knowing. But it was just emptiness. It was as if my whole body had turned to glass and I was afraid to move for fear of breaking. I squeezed her hand tighter. "I'm so sorry, Linda. I'm so sorry." She laughed bitterly. "At least now I can stop searching. At least now I can sleep, even if I don't want to dream." The next hour passed in silence. We sat on the curb, eating watery soup, sharing the silence that only grief can bring. Linda talked about Toby as a boy, how he loved old horror movies, how he hated peas, how he'd fall asleep on her shoulder in the car. All those little precious things that meant nothing to the world but everything to Mother. Later, as we parted, Linda grabbed my hands, her eyes determined despite the tears. "Keep searching, Deborah. If it killed me, I'd do it all over again for one more minute with him." I watched her walk away, shoulders slumped, consumed by the city, her pain cutting into me, sharp as broken glass. For the rest of the day, I couldn't shake it. The knowledge that searching doesn't always end in meeting. Sometimes it ends in silence, loss, empty rooms and beds that will never sleep again. That night, I wrote another letter to Lynn. The words spilled out faster than I could control them. "Dear Lynn, today, I learned what it's like to lose hope completely. I wish I could put you in a bubble, safe from this world, from all danger, from all mistakes. But I can't. All I can do is keep looking, keep loving you, even if you never come back. I tucked the letter under my pillow and lay awake for a long time, haunted by Linda's story, praying that mine would end differently. It was a Thursday, almost 6 months to the day I first saw Lynn on the street. The city was sweltering in the spring heat, and I had one flyer left. Its edges were frayed from the touch of too many hands. Eddie, the social worker, called in the afternoon. Deborah, I think you should come to St. Cecilia's. There's a girl here asking for you. My heart was pounding so hard I almost dropped the phone. Is that her? He hesitated. You should come. I drove like a woman possessed, ignoring red lights or honking cars. My fingers were cramping on the steering wheel. Outside the shelter, the sunlight was blinding my eyes, reflecting off the broken windows, and my legs threatened to give way as I pushed open the door. The lobby was noisy, filled with the rustle of tired bodies and the smell of sour coffee. At the far end, hunched over in a plastic chair, was a girl with her hair hanging lifelessly around her face, a blue jacket 2 sizes too big for her, wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Lynn, I said, barely above a whisper, afraid to ruin the moment. She looked up and for a moment time seemed to compress. Her eyes were sunken, her face drawn and bruised. But there she was, my Lynn, my baby, so incredibly alive. She stood unsteadily. For a moment we both hesitated, afraid the dream would break. Then she stepped into my arms and I caught her, holding her as if I could anchor her to the ground. We both began to cry, all words lost. I could feel the sharpness of her shoulder blades, the way she shuddered at my touch. Her hands were ice cold, her breath shallow against my neck. For a long time we said nothing. I just rocked her, whispering her name over and over. Lynn. Lynn. My Lynn. Finally she pulled away, wiping her nose on her sleeve. Her voice was hoarse and quiet. I have nowhere else to go, Mom. My throat was tight with gratitude and grief. You did the right thing. You're safe now. Eddie appeared in the doorway, nodding at us. You both have a room for the night. We'll get her checked out by a nurse. I thanked him, tears still streaming down my cheeks. When we were alone, I took Lynn's hands in mine, memorizing every line and scar. We would get through this. We would find a way. Lynn just nodded, her gaze wandering to the window, distant now. I wanted to wrap her in my arms, take her home, erase everything that had happened. But as I studied her, I realized the road back would be long and winding if there was one at all. That night, I slept on the cot next to her bed, holding her hand as she trembled in her sleep, listening to the in and out of her breath, terrified it might stop, determined not to let go. For the first time in a long time, hope and fear sat side by side in my heart. I had my daughter back, if only for a moment, and I would have done anything to keep her safe. The nurse checked Lynn's vital signs and left us alone in the tiny room under the fluorescent lights. Outside, the noise of the city was a distant hum, but in that moment, the world shrank to just the two of us. I poured water into a paper cup and handed it to her. Lynn's hands were shaking so badly that she spilled some, but she managed to swallow. I studied her, really studied her for the first time in years. Her cheeks were sunken, her lips were chapped, new scars were appearing on her wrists and the insides of her arms. There was a hardness in her eyes I'd never seen before. She seemed both older and impossibly young. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, she cleared her throat. I'm sorry, Mom. My breath caught in my throat. You don't have to say this. You don't have to. I have to. Her voice was rough. I'm sorry I ran away. For everything. But I didn't know what else to do. I thought maybe if I left, things would get better. Or maybe I just wanted to disappear. I tried to take her hand, but she flinched. So I kept it on the blanket. Close, but not touching. I've made mistakes too, Lynn. I should have listened. I should have tried harder to understand. Her eyes filled with tears. It was never about you, Mom. Not really. I was just lost. After the divorce, I felt like I didn't matter anymore. Like no one saw me. The people there saw me. At least they pretended to. She looked away, her jaw tensing. But it's not what you think. This isn't family. This is a prison. I've tried to leave, but there's always someone watching. There's always someone waiting to drag you back in. The drugs make it easier, but only for a little while. My heart breaks for her. Let me help, please. We can go home or anywhere. You don't have to be alone." She shook her head, wiping her face. "I can't, Mom. If I leave now, they'll find me. They'll hurt you. I don't want you in this." I felt a helpless rage, a desire to tear the world apart to keep her safe. "You're my daughter. I'd do anything for you. Anything." Lynn let out a shaky breath. "You don't understand. There's no way out. There really isn't. You can't save me. No one can." I wanted to argue, to promise her the impossible, but I saw the defeat in her eyes, the deep, debilitating hopelessness. Instead, I leaned closer, my voice shaking. "I love you. I always have. That will never change. Not under any circumstances." The ghost of a smile crossed her face. "I know, Mom. I love you too." I never stopped. We sat together in silence, broken but still bound by love. Outside, a siren began to wail, distant and cold. That night, after she fell asleep, I wrote another letter. "Dear Lynn, tonight I saw you for who you are, scared and strong and hurt and still my little girl. I wish I could take your pain and carry it for you. I wish I could build a world where nothing could hurt you. I don't know how to fix this, but I'll never stop trying." I put the letter with the others and lay next to her in the dark, listening to her breathe, trying to hold on to this moment as tightly as I could. By morning, Lynn was looking worse, her eyes bloodshot, her hands shaking so badly she could barely eat the toast the nurse brought her. I sat next to her, watching her struggle to swallow. Each bite felt like a battle she was losing. The shelter would give us 2 nights. Then Lynn would have to go. I tried to talk her into staying longer, into going to rehab or to the hospital. "Do you need help?" I begged. "We can go anywhere. Just let me take you somewhere safe." Lynn shook her head. "It won't work, Mom. They know where I am. If I leave with you, they'll come for us. They'll hurt you to get to me." I thought about calling the police, but after all those pointless nights begging for help, I knew what would happen. They'd take her statement, tell her she could leave if she wanted, and then dump her on the street. The system was never set up for girls like her. Still, I tried. I called every number the nurse gave me. Detox centers, women's shelters, rehabs. They all had waiting lists or wouldn't accept girls with active warrants or said she had to show up sober. One woman offered a place at a rehab 2 hours north, but we had to drive there ourselves, and Lynn had to stay sober until her appointment. I looked at Lynn, sweaty and pale and darting her eyes, and I knew it was impossible. "Maybe you could just come home to Texas," I whispered, my voice shaking. "We could start over, just for a little while." She smiled weakly, sadly. "I wish I could, Mom. I really do. But I'm tired. I just want to sleep." That night, I barricaded the door to our room at the shelter with a chair. I dozed on the cot, one arm over her blanket, listening to footsteps in the hallway, afraid that every sound was someone coming to take her away again. In the early morning, I found her in the bathroom, hunched over the sink, shaking. "I don't feel good," she whispered. "Everything hurts." I wrapped her in a blanket, my arms barely able to hold her up. We drove to the clinic in a donated van. The nurse checked her vital signs, took her temperature, spoke words I didn't understand. After a while, we were allowed to stay, but only for a day. They had no beds left. Lynn laid her head in my lap as we waited in the crowded lobby of the clinic, surrounded by people coughing and crying and begging for medicine. I stroked her hair, humming a lullaby I used to sing when she was little, her eyes closed, her breathing ragged. "Let this save her," I prayed. "Let this be enough." But eventually, there was nowhere else to go. The system doors closed in our faces and the shadows of the city lengthened. As night fell, we were on the streets again, with no safe place to run. I held her tight, my heart clenching with every step, and tried not to wonder if this would feel like the end. The last night had come without warning, like a door slamming softly into the darkness. We found a bench at the edge of MacArthur Park, away from the streetlights and the endless roar of traffic. Lynn was exhausted, her head on my shoulder, her hands shaking in her lap. I pulled the blanket tighter around her, willing my warmth into her bones. We spoke quietly, afraid to disturb the fragile peace that had settled between us. She told me stories about the girls she had met, some still alive, some lost on the streets, all searching for something they couldn't name. She asked about home, about Joshua and her sisters, about little things, whether the orange cat was still sleeping on the porch, whether her room still smelled like vanilla lotion. I told her everything I could, painting pictures of Texas sunsets and Sunday dinners, trying to bring back the world she'd lost. I told her how much we missed her, how Joshua still left her favorite cereal on the counter in case she came back. After a long silence, Lynn looked up at me. Her eyes were glassy, tired. "I'm sorry I hurt you, Mom. I'm sorry I couldn't be better." I wrapped my arms around her, holding her as tightly as I could. "You don't have to be better. You just need to be here." She smiled, a glimpse of the old Lynn. "I'm tired, Mom. I don't know if I can do this anymore." My heart broke, but I forced myself to nod. "Whatever you need, I'm here. I'll stay as long as you want." We watched the city lights twinkle, listening to distant music and laughter. The world went on as if nothing had changed. She laid her head in my lap and I stroked her hair, humming a lullaby she loved as a child. I wished I could bottle this moment, keep her safe and close forever. When she fell asleep, I stayed awake, afraid to let go, afraid of what the next morning would bring. Before dawn, she stirred, her eyes blurry. "I love you, Mom. Don't forget, okay?" I kissed her forehead, tears streaming down my face. "I will never forget. I love you more than anything in the world." As the sun rose, painting the sky purple and orange and gold, she squeezed my hand one last time, then fell asleep again. I watched her chest rise and fall, counting each breath, holding on as long as I could. I didn't know it then, but it was our goodbye. The days blurred into each other after that last night. Lynn disappeared from the shelter as quietly as she had come. I spent 2 days searching parks, homeless shelters, bus stations, anywhere I could think of. Each time I asked, "Have you seen her?" People just shook their heads or looked away. On the third morning, the phone rang in my hotel room. The sound cut through the silence like a knife. I answered on the second ring, the world narrowing to the hum of the line and the terror in my chest. "Is this Deborah?" The voice was formal, fragile, already regretful. "Yes, this is Officer Marquez of the Los Angeles Police Department. I'm so sorry, ma'am. We found a young woman matching your daughter's description. She was taken to City General Hospital last night. She overdosed. She didn't make it." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The world spun, and I clutched the phone so tightly I thought it might snap in my hand. "No," I whispered. The word was too small for the pain. "No, you're wrong. She just called. The officer's voice had softened, but it didn't matter anymore. "We need you to come identify her. I'm so sorry." I hung up without another word. My body moved on its own, and I stumbled to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face as if I could wake myself from this nightmare. The mirror reflected someone else's grief, puffy eyes, ashen skin, a mouth twisted in disbelief. I sat on the bed, holding the last letter Lynn had written. The ink was still smeared from my tears. I read it over and over, begging the words to mean something more. Something that could bring her back. The hours that followed were a blur. Signing the papers, identifying her small, lifeless body, calling Joshua and my mother, listening to their screams on the other end of the line. There was nothing to do but survive that moment. The outside world went on. Cars hummed. The sun rose and set. People went to work and came home. But my world was over. Everything I had fought for, everything I had hoped for, died with my daughter in that sterile hospital room. In the silence, I clung to her memories. The sound of her laughter, the warmth of her embrace, the echo of her last words. "I love you, Mom. Don't forget, okay?" I wouldn't forget. I couldn't. But I didn't know how to live in a world without her. The flight home was a blur, an empty shell of a woman clutching a tattered backpack, numb to the world, crossing 3 states back to Texas. Joshua met me at the airport, his face older and sterner than I remembered. He didn't say anything. He just hugged me so tightly it hurt. And for the first time since Lynn died, I let myself cry. The days leading up to the funeral were a blur. My mother made calls. Joshua helped me pick out a simple dress. Neighbors brought over casseroles we couldn't eat. I wandered the house, touching every surface, every memory. Lynn's room was untouched, the faint scent of her favorite lotion still on her pillow. I sat on her bed, surrounded by relics of her childhood. Trophies, crumpled drawings, a half-filled journal with slanted handwriting. On the day of the funeral, the church was full of faces I barely recognized. People came from every corner of our old lives. Teachers, neighbors, women from church, old friends we hadn't seen in years. Some came out of pity, others out of a desire to help. But most came for the same reason I did, to say goodbye to the girl we had all lost in different ways. The pastor read the Psalms, his voice a gentle current trying to calm a sea of grief. Joshua stood next to me, stoic, his jaw clenched. My mother wept openly, a handkerchief pressed to her lips. I felt distant, separated from my own body. The world narrowed to the simple wooden coffin at the front of the church. People talked, telling stories of Lynn as a child, her smile, her stubbornness, her kindness. Some remembered her in ways I had forgotten. Volunteering at the animal shelter, standing up for little sisters, singing in the church choir before it all came crashing down. When it was my turn, I walked to the front with shaking hands. The words I wrote were simple. My daughter wasn't just my choices. She was the light of our lives. A girl who made mistakes, who got lost, who loved fiercely and was loved just as fiercely in return. I would never stop loving her. She was mine. Even when she ran, even when she broke my heart, I would do it all over again if I could hold her one more time. After the service, we gathered in the cemetery. The scent of wildflowers wafted through the breeze and the sun glinted off the tombstones. As they lowered Lynn's coffin, I pressed one of my unscented letters into her hands, tucking it under the folds of her dress. "Goodbye, my dear," I whispered, and the words disappeared into the wind. "I will always love you. Always." As the earth closed in on her, I knew I would never get the answers I wanted. I would never know the moment when hope truly died. I would never understand all the ways I had failed and all the ways I had done my best. Grief, I had learned, changes shape. It follows you home, sits next to you at the dinner table, whispers in your dreams. But in the silence that followed, surrounded by the people who loved her, I felt something else. A fragile thread of gratitude for every moment I had, every memory, every bit of love we had shared. I couldn't save Lynn, but I could remember her. I could carry her forward the only way I knew how. A week after the funeral, while going through Lynn's old things, I found an envelope tucked away in the back drawer of her dresser. The handwriting was unmistakable. Her slanted, looping script, the way she always dotted her I's with little circles. On the front, in faded blue ink, was written simply, "For Mom." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were 3 letters, each written on the same lined paper she used for her school essays. The first was dated a few months after she ran away. "Dear Mom, I know you're looking for me. I can feel it, even here. Sometimes I see women on the street with leaflets and I think about going up to them, asking if they know you, but I'm scared. I don't know how to get home. I'm sorry for all the ways I've hurt you. I hope you're okay. Love, Lynn." The second was shorter, written during what must have been one of her darkest days. Sometimes at night I dream that I'm back in my old room. I can hear you humming. I can smell dinner on the stove. I wish I'd listened more. I wish I'd stayed. I know what I did to you was unforgivable, but I love you. I always have. The last letter was dated just a few weeks before she died. The paper was stained with tears. The ink was smudged. "Mom, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Please don't blame yourself. It wasn't your fault. You were the best mom anyone could have. I was just lost and couldn't find my way back. I hope you remember the good times, the laughs we used to have, the car rides, the way you held me when I was sick. I want you to live. I want you to forgive yourself. And I want you to remember that I was always your daughter, and you were always my home." I clutched the letters to my chest, sobbing in the silence of her empty room. For a long time, I allowed myself to grieve, not just for the daughter I'd lost, but for the love that remained, stubborn and shining, even after everything. Later, I put the letters in a small wooden box with the ones I'd written to her, a conversation between a mother and a daughter that spanned the years and the distance, and all the words that were never spoken. That night, for the first time since Lynn died, I dreamed of her. Not as she was at the end, but as a child, running around the yard, laughing, her hair blown about by the wind. When I woke up, the grief was still there, but there was something else too. A small, steadfast hope. A reminder that love, even when battered and broken, never truly dies. Grief doesn't disappear. It transforms.